Hey guys, SGT here, and I've got Bob Chapman on the line again. Today we're going to get into some pretty serious territory. As somebody trying to uncover the truth and get to the heart of the matter, sometimes you have to get into some dark territory and just let the chips fall where they may. Here's Bob Chapman on bond fraud, metals fraud, and 9/11.
So, Bob, what I want to ask you about today is I want to talk about the economic extermination, as Jim Willie puts it, of the American economy. Now, we're definitely at a point in the United States where even if you raise the income tax to 100%, there's absolutely no way of covering the liabilities of the federal government. So we're at a point where the end game is absolutely in sight. And I wanted to talk about the biggest fraud in the history of the world. And it's not the 100-to-1 paper manipulation of the gold and silver markets. It's the treasury bonds, Bob. Do you remember when Cantor Fitzgerald was destroyed on 9/11 and 658 of its employees were killed?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you look back at the 1990 decade, and I'm quoting Jim Willie here, and this is taken directly from an interview that Jim Willie did with Max Keiser. If you look back at the 1990 decade, you see reports that J.P. Morgan issued $2.2 trillion more in treasury bonds than the deficits dictated for that decade with the U.S. government. He believes that the records for that fraud were in the top floor of Cantor Fitzgerald's offices in the World Trade Center towers. Cantor Fitzgerald held floors 101 through 105 in the North Tower, and the only person who survived was the CEO.
Because he didn't appear that day.
He wasn't there. He took his son to school. But the point is that there were $2.2 trillion worth of reasons for 9/11 to happen.
That's right. And that was in addition to the gold that was downstairs and the insurance on the building.
That's right.
I mean, the thing was an ultimate scam. And then, of course, there were the puts that were bought on the airline carriers. And
that's right.
And others
and that
we've never gotten to the bottom of.
Well, but it tracks back to Buzzy Krongard and the CIA.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's Brown and Company.
That's right. But see,
I knew all these people. I knew Bert Cantor.
No, I know you did. And
he's been dead many years, but people got to understand. I've been in around the brokerage business for over 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
I knew all these players.
Well, look, you've got primary U.S. government dealers like Cantor Fitzgerald allegedly selling hundreds of billions, if not trillions, in U.S. government bonds that don't exist. And the question is, where did those proceeds go?
In their pocket. They're thieves. They're a criminal syndicate.
So, Bob, my point is that as bad as things are, they're far, 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 far worse than any of us can really possibly imagine, aren't they?
Everybody else except me and a handful of other people. Because I realize how bad they are. And this has been going on for a century. And I've been involved for over half a century. And it is beyond people's imagination the money that these criminals have stolen and their quest to have a one-world government and suppress the people in the world, make slaves out of them, and reduce the population of the world by 60 to 80%. And that comes from the literature. I don't dream that stuff up. Mm-hmm. And with all of that said, I've always realized, I mean, none of these other writers and other people have ever been shot at. I have. I mean, I've had a rocky life doing this. I never talk about it unless it comes up. And this is a good time to tell you that it's worse than what you think it is. And these people kill people out of hand. They don't care about any rules or any laws. They think they can do anything they want. Mm-hmm. And in the final analysis, this is unfortunately not going to be solved through politics or governments. It's going to be solved on the streets. And the people are going to win. And the bad guys, the people we talk about, and the brokerage firms and the banks and the insurance companies and the transnational corporations that belong to the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberger Group, they're all going to have to be tried and put in jail and their riches taken from them because he stole them all.
Right.
And some of them are going to have to be executed because they've committed treason, like George Bush and his father.
Now, let me ask you, we spoke briefly yesterday on the phone, just a little touch base, a little hello. We didn't record that call, but you mentioned that you're actually concerned for Max Keiser's safety because he's been such a truth teller. He's living in Paris. He's been so outspoken about the need to fill in the blanks here, but I mean, he hasn't minced his words about what needs to happen to these criminals. Tell us a little bit about your concerns for Max.
It's very simple. He tells the truth, and he's hurting these people badly. I mean, I do the same thing, but I'm not on national television. I am on radio, but I'm not on TV, and most people watch more TV than they do listen to the radio. And nobody knows where I'm at. And they're not going to find out. And if they come after me, they better bring a lot of people because they shoot back. But Max doesn't think in that venue. He's wide open. I mean, anybody who these people want to kill, they can kill. Believe me. You got to understand what you're dealing with. These people are diabolically evil.
But many of us do understand that, Bob. I mean, and it gets back to this idea that on 9/11, so much more happened than meets the eye. Look, the reason I bring this up, Bob, is that I want people to understand. Okay, every single time I get 10 ounces of silver or 100 ounces of silver, it makes me feel empowered as a sovereign to do that, to get out of this fiat paper, because I know that things are so much worse than meets the eye. And the point that you're making about Max and his safety is that these people that are in control of this system, these people that own the Federal Reserve and own these criminal banks, are ruthless. And they're ruthless beyond measure. I mean, to the point where we can get into talking about Satanism and all these other things. I'm not bringing up 9/11 because I want to get into conspiracy theory. I'm bringing up 9/11 because I want to talk about the facts of how dire our situation is and what it is that we're facing.
Well, the records were all there. And the CIA had records in the building as well. There was a multiplicity of reasons for them doing what they did to the buildings. There were special people in there planting professionally all of the munitions that were needed to take that building down.
Well, they had the largest elevator
remodernization.
Yeah, in the history of the world, taking place in the year prior to 9/11. So, but the point is that there's a lot more to the 9/11 story, and I think we challenge people to dig into that a little bit. Wouldn't you say?
I think so, and it'll all come out. It always does. I mean, even things that went on in 1307, we're finding out more today. You know, this is turning up, and that's turning up through the centuries. There's always somebody that writes something down, passes away, and maybe 300 years later, they're rummaging around in the cellar or the attic, and they come across these journals, and they say, well, the Knights Templars had to be wiped out because the Vatican and the royal heads of Europe wanted to take over the lending of money in Europe, banking. That's really what happened. And that's the way we find these things out. And very few of the Knights Templars survived. Almost every one of them were killed. And the ones that weren't went to Scotland, and they later formed the Scottish Rite. There's so much to this history, and you know something? 99% of the letter writers don't have a clue. They don't even know what this is about. You do, but most of them don't. And that's why they can't come up with the right answers, because they don't understand the mind that they're working against and what their goal is. And it takes years to do that.
You know, there's an issue that I don't get into on my channel, and we can either talk about it on the record or off the record. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on this issue of Zionism. What do you make of Zionism?
It was created by the money powers in Europe, particularly the Rothschilds. And Lord Balfour was the one who rammed it through the Parliament and in England to give supposedly Jewish people a country of their own, when in fact it was to set up Zionism is another force, just like they set up communism and the different kinds, the Mensheviks, the Bolsheviks. I mean, most people don't even know what I'm talking about. They've never even heard about it. They didn't know that Marx and had been put on a train and that went through from Switzerland through Germany, and the German government left it alone because the German government knew he was being funded from London and New York to go to Russia to overthrow the government. Ed Griffin and I are like an encyclopedia.
I know.
We know all this stuff. That's why we're able to be right almost all the time, because we know what we're dealing with. It's just like being a detective. If you want to understand what they're going to do, you got to have all that history. And then on top of it, you have to be able to understand the criminal mind and to think like a criminal. You have to force yourself to do that because it's indecent to your mind to do so, somebody like me. But that's how I figure out what they're doing. I'm right 98% of the time. And that's the only reason why. I get inside their heads.
Guys, this is the end of part 1. Please click here for part 2, The Illuminati.